On Deji 360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
Constitution is constituent.
Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country.
I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly.
God forbid that I go to join that panel.
Deji 360, providing clarity to issues. All right, welcome back. Now, if there's one topic that has always generated so much controversy in an election year, it is funding. It's a period when politicians spend heavily, but the question has always been how much should be enough for politicians to spend in an election year, and what exactly is the source of the money? Those are the questions that have largely remained unanswered, but what does the Nigerian Constitution say? The Constitution clearly states that a presidential candidate cannot spend more than 1 billion naira and of course, for governorship candidate, the spending is pegged at 200 million naira, while senatorial and House of Representatives candidates cannot spend beyond 40 million naira and 20 million naira respectively. For candidate for state assembly election, it is 10 million naira. Now, that is the provision of the Constitution, but we all know that things actually don't pan out that way in reality. Politicians spend far beyond what the Constitution allows. So just how then do you enforce the law? Another issue that has plagued recent elections in this country is that of vote buying and how to ensure vote buyers and other electoral offenders are punished effectively. Well, the Nigerian government might just have found an answer to all of this. Just might. That's the underlying word. Those are the underlying words, I should say. The Federal Executive Council recently approved 3 electoral bills that it says will address the problems. The bills will be forwarded to the National Assembly for debate and possible passage. Well, possible passage. But the question is, can those bills actually be passed before the next election, or should we be looking at the 2023 elections? We'll be talking about that. Now, one of the bills suggests the setting up of a permanent tribunal to prosecute electoral offenders. Let's take a listen to the Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, give further details of that bill.
Certain bills were formulated, were drafted. The bill relating to Electoral Offences Commission and Tribunal Establishment Bill, which seeks to have in place a tribunal and a commission that will be responsible for ensuring the prosecution of electoral offences along the line. As you know, the prevailing position is an ad hoc arrangement whereby INEC sent in officers to monitor the conduct of the election. The police equally, by way of an ad hoc arrangement, sent in policemen to monitor the conduct of the election. So eventually, by the time elections are concluded, a lot of infractions might have taken place, but then getting relevant officers to now come to court for the purpose of investigation, prosecution, associated things is becoming a problem. So arising from the commitment of the federal government, the need has arisen to have in place a permanent structure in place that will be responsible for not only investigation but indeed the prosecution of electoral offenders, with a view to enhance the system by way of establishing a very good culture of the conduct of the election and ensuring enforcement in cases of breaches. So that was what was deliberated, and the 3 fundamental bills that were formulated, the Electoral Offences Commission and Tribunal Establishment Bill, the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2018, which is a bill that seeks to make certain amendments to the Electoral Act with a view to enhance the accountability and the quality of the conduct of the election, was put in place. And then the constitutional amendment, alteration amendment bill as well, was equally proposed to ensure at the end of the day certain constitutional amendments as it relates to the conduct of the election.
Well, those are the bills, but the question is, can those bills be passed before the next election? Joining me to discuss this further is Libros Oshua, who is a lawyer and a political analyst. Libros, thank you very much for coming on the program. First off, give me your impression of these bills that the minister talked about there that will be forwarded to the National Assembly in the coming days.
This is not the first time we're hearing about these bills. It's always been a topic of debate. Right from the days of Yaradua, there's been advocacy for the creation of electoral offenses, tribunals, and then, because if you look at the Electoral Act, it makes, copious provisions from Section 117 all the way to Section 132, creates, electoral offenses. And you find out that
not electoral offenses tribunal.
No, you have, I talked about Section 117 to 132.
Talking about electoral offenses.
Electoral offenses. And so you find out that prosecuting those offenses has always been a problem. So government in, government out will identify these problems and then, mount the idea of creating, of tackling the problems headlong. But no government have been able to bail the cat by actually proposing a bill to the National Assembly to create these tribunals and then to create a commission.
The government now says it wants to do it.
I'm getting there, to create a commission to actually, do it, to ensure that, there is a commission in place that would be able to monitor and help INEC, because INEC also had been complaining about, in one breath, conducting election, and in another breath having to prosecute electoral offenses. And so in most cases, they'll tell you they were handed over to the police, and, the story ends there. And then you also have other functions like monitoring accounts, publications of accounts, and in places where these accounts are not sent, audited accounts are not sent, and in some cases where INEC refused to even publish as prescribed by Section 92 of the Constitution, what happens? And so that's where, I would say this is a laudable idea by the government, even though it's coming very, very late in the day, but where I can tell you that's not for this 2019 election.
Because
definitely
the lawmakers may not be able to sit.
We're talking about three amendments, three bills here.
Yeah.
Because if to create these special courts, the Electoral Act alone cannot, take cognizance of that. You will need to also amend the Constitution to recognize, to give recognition to that, creation. And then also, you also need to amend the Constitution to recognize, that, because you find that the problem between the EFCC Act and the 1999 Constitution as amended, in some cases when it has to do with, freezing of accounts and the rest. And so I think the proponent of this bill also would want to look at how you bring that bill to be in tandem with the provisions of the Constitution so that there won't be conflict. And so all of that, even to amend the existing one, we've been at it back and forth. Not to talk of, 3 new bills, and then you just have a few months to the election. No, that's not.
But something I want to ask.
But it's a laudable idea.
Is it difficult for our courts, the courts that we have at the moment now, to try these electoral cases? Why is it difficult for them to do?
No. The courts.
Why is it necessary to set up separate tribunal?
First and foremost, I would.
I'm talking about our ordinary courts.
I will also, because after we talked about these tribunals, the advantages, I will also talk about the demerits of them in answering your question. You find out that first and foremost, if you look at the electoral offenses, some of these offenses can be categorized, as everyday offenses that you can prosecute in our everyday courts. But what we find missing is the willpower to prosecute these offenses, because in some cases, just like Section 1, subsection 2 of the Constitution that forbids you taking over government unlawfully, but when you take over unlawfully and you succeed, what becomes of you? So in the same vein, where offenses are committed by a major party and the party wins the election, it becomes, a moral burden in some cases. It becomes difficult for them to go all out to tell Nigerians that the election that brought them to office, was flawed, and then prosecute people that aided, that flawed process. And so by extension, the losers also, who would have also participated, will also enjoy that benefit. That's where that willpower had been lacking. And also, we have also seen that with EFCC to some extent, where, the creation of EFCC has also to a very large extent brought sanity to some financial dealings that we do. Unlike when you had the police, because we've so battered our police, and it's only, there's a limit to what they can do. Sure. And then to talk about the demerit of this, the fact that the government, you need funds to make this work. The government is complaining about lack of funds to even fund the existing courts. Even election petition tribunal has become a big problem in Nigeria, where the regular court suffers as a result of, election petition tribunals.
Sorry to interject here. Can't the election petition tribunals also handle cases of electoral offenses?
Yeah, the Act empowers the election petition tribunal to handle cases of electoral offenses, but the election petition tribunal does not have criminal jurisdiction.
Okay.
And so it cannot, it is a tribunal that is to determine the validity or otherwise of an election.
And they're supposed to operate within a
and then they are
period.
also supposed to operate within a specific period on ad hoc basis. So they are not tribunals that are on permanent basis that, you once these matters are investigated. And another big problem that you have, also associated with election prosecution, even prosecuting electoral matters at the tribunal, is the fact that some of the staffs that you use to prosecute election are employed on ad hoc basis. Yes. And so in some cases, a man who is transferred to Zamfara to do his NYSC, participated in the conduct of the election, and then he's transferred out of, he finishes youth service, and he leaves Zamfara back to Abia, where he came from. And now you have election petition that he participated in. You need him to come testify. He's nowhere to be found. So it also would affect some of the electoral offenses, like you heard the Honorable Attorney General did say. And so that's why government needs to look at it, holistically, think it through. You also need to make funds available, because we're talking about election here, the pathway to the source of government funds. And so that's why people will kill to, get to government offices. People will bribe, they will maim to, be elected. And so when it comes to electoral offenses also, they would also do everything humanly possible to shade those that are foot soldiers that were used to, manipulate the election. And so that's where you need those that are going to be investigating electoral offenses. You will need them to be very comfortable. And then also you will need not just taken from the regular courts that we have, and then why, one arm will suffer to the benefit of the other one. You also need to employ, judges. And then they need to, like in Lagos State, for example, now you can't just come and create one electoral offenses tribunal and expect all the matters to go there, because even at the local government, so there'll be backlog. So at the end of the day, some of the cases might not see the light of the day. And so you'll be back to square one where you started from. So you can do it like you have the National Industrial Court, and with divisions everywhere, and the judges
which is what this bill intends to
which is what the bill intends to do. And so, But if you if you take it through that process, someday, and then with the willpower, then someday would be able to prosecute electoral offenses.
And talking about willpower now, we're going to talk about election spending and why it's difficult to actually monitor how much politicians spend. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. On Deji 360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
Constitution is constituent.
Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dullards that call themselves governors in this country.
I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly.
God forbid that I go to join that panel.
Deji 360, providing clarity to issues. All right, welcome back. I still have Libros Oshoma, a lawyer and political analyst, with us here, and we're talking about election spending. Libros, it's very clear, the provision of the Constitution. I mean, a presidential candidate is not supposed to spend more than 1 billion naira for election purposes. Governorship candidate, 200 million naira. But sitting here, I mean, I know as well that in reality that is not always the case. I mean, if you were running for the presidency of this country, you would be spending far more than 1 billion naira, whether you win or not. Why is it so difficult for INEC? Because INEC is supposed to be monitoring. Why is it so difficult for INEC to actually monitor and probably ensure that politicians don't spend beyond what they're supposed to do? Are politicians, for instance, supposed to make returns to INEC on their expenses and all of that?
As prescribed in Section 91 of the Electoral Act, spells out, the benchmark for the ceiling for which you cannot spend. And then if you go to Section 92, it also talks about election expenses for political parties to be agreed to between the party and INEC. And then one beautiful thing about those provisions is that at the end of the day, by virtue of subsection 3, election expenses of a political party shall be submitted to the commission in a separate or detailed return within 6 months after an election. And such return shall be signed by the political party and the auditor. And then it also says that the return in subsection 5, the return referred to in subsection 3 of this section shall show the amount of money expended by or on behalf of the party on election expenses. And then, if you go further, it says the election, the INEC, the commission shall publish these election expenses in the dailies and then make it available.
Very good. I mean, that's on paper, and I can see the figures there.
Yes, and make it available for inspection during regular business by anybody.
I can't remember the last time I saw INEC make such publications.
Exactly. So, if you look at the provision of the law, it is very clear. And that's where, Senate societies develop, electoral practices from.
If INEC is not publishing, is there a chance that the political parties are not submitting their audited reports to INEC 6 months after election?
It says that the fine for not publishing is 1 billion, and for future of the commission's amount and expenses, but then INEC needs to put its foot down. What happens in other climates, immediately after the election, the audited account is published. Who gave what, how, from where? Because there is also a limit to how much you can give.
And there's also a limit to what you can do with the funds.
If the money exceeds 1 million naira from an unknown person, the party also ought to reject such funds. But in a situation where you don't publish...
Now, the funds you're talking about, like donations to the party.
Yes. If you look at Section 93, subsection 1, and subsection 2...
You can't donate more than 1 million.
You can't, if the source is coming from, if it's coming from unknown quarters, where you can identify the name and address of the person that contributes the money, that's once this money exceeds a million, the party should reject it. But otherwise, they'll forfeit that money to INEC. But as laudable and as beautiful as these sections are, what happens is that either the party does not submit, or INEC will tell you they don't even have the machineries, apparatus to monitor these finances. And so, in some cases, the political party will tell you that they spent the money because the funds for election spent by the candidate is different from the one spent by the political party.
Because honestly, it would be interesting if INEC was to publish, say, the audited report now of campaign expenses of political party A, for instance. It would be interesting for Nigerians to see, for instance, say in the 2015 election, what the APC or the PDP actually spent.
These are by virtue of their position as political party, they are seen as public entities. And so, if you source for funds from the public, there's need for the public to know who gave what and how it was spent. And that's why even Donald Trump in America is having issues with campaign funds.
Campaign funds.
And then, because what happens immediately after election, campaign funds are published. And so you will know where funds came from. And that's why you can easily say, oh, IROA contributed to this man's election. There's no way he's going.
And where the funds actually went to.
Where the funds actually went to, what was spent. And also, you'll be able, the moment politicians know, or the political parties know that this will be the first step immediately after election, the limit to how much will be spent, there will be a limit to how much will be spent, and then also they will monitor those fundings, because some people during election is, tea party for them, because that's when they make money. You don't account to nobody. And so like I speak to you now, assuming, let's take the both major political parties,
PDP and APC.
For the APC, the nomination form for governorship candidates is
I think 22 point something million.
Just assuming that just one candidate for 36 states, you're running into almost it's something million here. And then talk about the PDP also, the same thing. PDP, as we speak now, with their presidential candidate, with the numbers that they have, how much would have gone in. And that's public funds. And at the end of the election, no account to nobody. These are ways you check corruption.
In that case, we have to hold INEC responsible.
Exactly.
If the law is not being enforced,
you don't need a special tribunal. You don't need a special court
to do this,
to enforce this. That's why I told you. I said we need to go back to the waste panel reports. Even before we get to the Nnamani panel report, the waste panel report, where the
Nnamani panel report, that electoral reform report that gave rise to these 3 bills that the Attorney General talked about.
Because also the waste panel report started it. Because you first need to look for the head of INEC that will have the willpower to implement all of this. Because
why is it so important that we put a tab or keep a tab now on what political parties spend on, during elections? Why is it important?
Deji, I just told you, these are public funds. Political parties are not just political parties. They are not just social organizations. Even social organizations that are NGOs, that are non-for-profit, the Corporate Affairs Commission also expects them to send.
Why is it also important that political parties should not, for instance, the presidency, not spend beyond 1 billion?
So that, because if you're spending beyond that amount, it becomes, at that point, it becomes what you can target, do or die. And then a man who even the 1 billion that we're talking about, a man who spends 1 billion to get to office and you do not even know how that 1 billion came about. You think he will get to office and then will not want to recoup. So to forestall a situation where people will turn political parties or political offices to business venture, and that's why we need to monitor where funds are coming from. Because some people will give in expecting returns. And so when the accounts are published, and then you know that Deji gave 1 million, and then tomorrow Deji is awarded a contract of 10 million naira, and to make a profit, you can put 1 and 2 together. Whether he's qualified for that contract or not is a different ballgame altogether. So, but the issue here is, these funds are public funds. And for every public fund, there's need for accountability. And the only way you can account is when you know how they came and how they went out. And then also these are people who are going to occupy public offices, whose responsibility for accountability in those offices also rest on their shoulders. So you also need to know the funds that they're spending to get to those offices.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you close your eyes to those things. Even now we're talking about terrorism and, all what's not. And that's why even the Electoral Act prohibits, funds coming from, abroad. You remember during Obama's election, some people gathered funds here and they were to send to...
And they did.
Because their law forbids it. So in the same vein here, you also need to know, because you can have a terrorist organization sponsors a political party, surreptitiously, and if you don't put your eye on the funds, the political party gets there and definitely will do their bidding. So for those purposes and so many other more, that's why there's need for not just INEC, all of us also to insist that INEC should comply with the provisions of Section 92 to publish the account of each political party. In the last election, some members have asked, the political parties to publish their account. It is not for the political. It's not a call for the political party. It is a call for INEC. INEC will now insist that the political party should make a return to them.
Very quickly, let's talk about this issue of vote buying. How difficult do you think that would be to prosecute, for instance, in a court like the Electoral Offences Tribunal?
You see, if you look
because vote buying, it's something difficult to prove, right?
It is not difficult to prove. Section 124, Section 125, as so many others makes provision. Section 130, 129. If you look at vote buying, is prohibited in all of these.
I know.
The person who commits the offense of bribery is liable on conviction.
Absolutely. I know it is prohibited, but I'm just saying how it just might be difficult to prove.
A voter commits an offense of bribery where before or during an election, directly or indirectly, himself or by any person on his behalf receives, agree, or contract for any money, gift, loan, or valuable consideration, office, place, or employment for himself or for another. So all of this. But the question is, it brings me back to INEC, the willpower to do the right thing.
Can I ask you a question? Can I just ask you?
Let me say,
if for instance, I gave you, on election day, I just give you money, say, take for transport, just take this as transport fare to just go vote. Yes, of course, I probably am a candidate, my party is taking part, then I just give you the money, say it's for transport. Would you call that vote buying?
You see, if you are a candidate or your candidate
or my party is
is taking part in an election, and then you come, you say, you can provide buses to ferry people.
If I haven't got the bus and all of that,
and then you now begin to share
money as transport fare.
The moment you begin to share money to people as transport fare to go vote, go out and vote for whoever you want to vote for. Then the next question should be, what is the distance between these places and the polling booths?
I understand you. The reason I asked all that question is because I just think it might be difficult sometimes.
No, it is not. It is not. For the investigator, he's going to look at these basic things to determine whether that money was meant to influence your voting. And so, what is the distance between the polling unit and this place that this man is coming from? And so if I am to leave my point A and it's about 2 poles away, why give me transport fare?
And under the circumstances.
And then that's one. And in some cases where it is so obvious, you say, vote for this person and then you get 2,000 naira. INEC had the power inherent by virtue of even their regulations, not just to prosecute, because once there are irregularities, you can cancel votes. And so once these are infractions, these are inducements. And so once you identify, but because we lack the willpower to do the right thing, and so we are fixated on those 2 major political parties. By the time
you are prosecuting both the giver and the taker.
Yes, the taker. So by the time you use the 2 major political parties to set example by nullifying those votes that were induced, and then an underdog emerges as winner, a lot of people also will sit up. You know fully well that if you share, and at the end of the day, those votes are going to be declared invalid anyway. And I also think that should be one of the function of the Electoral Offences Commission. Because the Attorney General also had talked about the fact that now you're going to have these people, you know, not on ad hoc basis, just like you have EFCC officials who will come as undercover to observe the process. And so in that case, some people might be arrested on the day of election, and you might be photographic evidence to even nullify votes that were induced.
Well, provided the commission is allowed to operate very independently. But Liberals, thank you very much.
That's another
thing altogether, because I know that will generate controversy in the future. But very quickly now, I mean, something dramatic, I don't know whether to call this dramatic now, happened. Finance Minister Kemi Adeosun resigning. You have something to say about that?
Fantastic.
Before we end this.
Fantastic.
And obviously over the NYSC certificate scandal.
Yes, fantastic. I would say, you know, kudos to her for they say voice of the people is the voice of God, for at least realizing that, you know, with this certificate scandal still hanging, you know, over our head, you know, it will, you know, be a dent to the anti-corruption posture of this government and might affect them negatively in the run-up to the election. And so, stepping aside, it's fantastic. But also, let the government that have been so mute on the issue, whether a certificate was issued or not, let the government not babached this process. Let there be investigation. And then, because I don't think she went to NYSC to procure a fake certificate. Somebody actually probably procured it for her. So if somebody is culpable, let's, you know, the law take its course. We shouldn't create supermen. Let's create, you know, super laws, super institutions. And so by so doing, you know, if Kemi Adeosun can be asked to resign, or if she can resign over this saga, now shame to, you know, some people that had said to hell with NYSC. It shows that the president also is not, you know, is not saying to hell to NYSC. So fantastic. But we should go the whole hog.
Okay. I mean, Liberals, thank you very much for coming on the program and for sharing your thoughts. Well, that's it on the program. If you want to watch it again, it's simple. Just go to our website, tv360nigeria.com. You'll find this program and lots more there. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/TV360 Nigeria. Now do subscribe to get the latest updates of happenings in Nigeria and, of course, across the world. On Google Plus, it's at TV360 Nigeria. And on Facebook, you could just like us. The address is facebook.com/TV360 online. You can as well follow us on Twitter. Our handle is at TV360 Nigeria. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week.